You pour gray water in this water bottle, and when you pour it out, it's completely transparent without any bacteria, and you can totally drink it.
Their best product can clean up to 20,000 liters of water, and this is enough to sustain a small family for at least 3 years.
Village started with this well and with this market garden, and from that they built 2 extra schools.
You got in touch with a water technology which was also using the solar energy to clean water.
And I remember the email after the meeting, and I said, yes, it was very good to meet you and the whole team. We didn't have a whole team, it was myself, my mother, and the accountant.
And they fight climate change because they stop burning trees and they stop emitting CO2 in the atmosphere.
Welcome to the Elliot for Water podcast. Here we will talk with entrepreneurs and change makers about water, social impact, and business. I'm Andrea, your host, and this episode is brought to you by Elliot for Water. Elliot for Water is a new tab extension that turns your homepage into a productivity dashboard and then uses 20% of the revenue to finance clean water projects. If you want to learn more, go to elliotforwater.com. And without further ado, here's your episode. Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Elliot for Water podcast. Today, I'm joined by Fabio Caligaris, advisor and investor in Elliot for Water. And since Fabio is here, it means that we are doing a new episode of the Ripple Effect series. And if you don't remember, or if you're not aware of what the Ripple Effect series is, Fabio, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Andrea, and thanks for having me a second time for the Ripple Effect series. It means that I didn't fail the first one, so I'm really pleased with it. And indeed, this is a parallel podcast series, let's say, in which we give voice to Elliot for Water, and we give voice to you, Andrea, in the first place. The Ripple Effect series is dedicated entirely to the heart and soul of Elliot. Why we thought about this name? Well, it's just think about a single drop of water hitting a still lake. Those waves, when they stretch out on the surface, they touch everything in their path. And that's called, in fact, the ripple effect. And that's the core of what we want to do in Elliot for Water. One small action at a time, creating a life-changing impact. And today's episode goes about this. In fact, every time we look at our productivity dashboard, or as we should go back in time to the very first Elliot for Water, every time we used to browse the web with the old Elliot for Water, we were building a bridge from our internet usage to a community that needs clean water. But bridges needs to attach to something else on the other side. And as you may recall from the previous episode that we've done about the ripple effect, we were touching about the business model of Elliot for Water as a search engine, of course, which was allocating part of its business profit to support water projects in third world countries. So today, we are taking a trip again down memory lane to the very early stages of this project. We are talking about the goals that you had, Andrea, back in those days in partnering with cutting-edge water tech products and technology, which were used to support local communities in third world country. So I want to start first with the very first technology that you came in contact with, which I read a lot and I watched lots of videos about it, and it's really interesting product. It's a water bottle with a built-in filter which purifies contaminated water through little tiny holes in the membranes of 0.015 micrometers. This product is called LifeSaver, okay? And to give you some perspective about how incredible is this water bottle, a virus is between 0.05 micrometers to 0.10. So basically, when the water filters down, it basically finds like a concrete wall. So all the pathogen, they cannot filter down to the purify water side of the bottle. Just to give you some data, their best product, the jerry can clean up to 20,000 liters of water. And this is enough to sustain a small family of 3 people for at least 3 years without the use of a single electrical outlet or any chemicals being used to clean up, to purify the water. So, Andrea, this was one of the very first technology that you came in contact with when Elliot was just a business idea. You had this vision of turning browser search profit into physical water. Why did you specifically think about LifeSaver at first?
It was actually the other way around. So I came in
Mhm.
contact with this technology before I even started thinking about creating Elliot for Water. I came in contact with this technology in the university because I was doing some sustainable development classes, and among those, we had water management as well. So that in that period is where I started getting interested into water, and I started getting to know more about water because I didn't have much experience before. And in that class, they showed us a tech talk. And the tech talk was from the founder of LifeSaver, that he was basically showing these plastic bottles with a filter inside. You pour gray, brown, dark water in this water bottle, and when you pour it out, is completely transparent without any bacteria, and you can totally drink it because the water has been purified by this filter that it has inside. So for me, it was mind-blowing because I had no idea you could do things like this, and I had no idea you could do things like this with something as simple as a water filter or as a water bottle. And I stick with that video for, I don't know how long. You know, when you see these things that stay in your head and you keep on going back and looking at it and watching it.
I
And
watched that video to learn more about LifeSaver. Actually, it was quite impressive what the
it
guy
is,
was doing.
as a technology, is a very interesting technology. And especially if you're new to these kind of things, because it almost looks like a miracle that brown water comes in and drinkable water comes out. And when I decided that I wanted to create Elliot for Water and I wanted to give people access to water, then the first thing that I thought was that video. And the first thing that I thought was I need to give these water bottles to the people who need them. And that's how I started the whole thing. And from that moment, well, on the business side, you have to start setting up the business. You need to start finding the people to create the website, like we discussed last time when I found Yannis. And then I needed to figure out all the other part, the organizational side, the business side, and the humanitarian side of things. So I reached out to them to start to see if there was a possibility to use those water bottles into water projects. So initially, when I started, I didn't have as much experience as I have now, obviously. And my thought process back then was, let's find an amazing technology like this one is, and then put it everywhere we go. But the real situation in the water projects is that there is no such a thing as a miracle technology that works everywhere, because every project is totally different from another project. If you go and in Guinea-Bissau, for example, where WellFound is working, you're going to need a certain type of technology or drilling wells or doing things that are more sustainable for that part. Whereas if you go in Haiti or if you go in India, maybe you can use different types of water technologies. For example, this type of water filtering are amazing when you have natural disaster, because you need something fast and quick that you can use, where they have already access to water but they need to purify it fast and easy. Those type of technologies are amazing. Whereas in places where maybe they don't even have the access to water itself, they are not as sustainable, simply because we are lacking the first material. So it's more important to dig a well to give them access to water rather than still have them walk 5 hours a day to then purify it. But besides that, the way that we got in contact, it wasn't as difficult. I mean, to be completely honest, if you asked me this question 2 days ago, so I would have told you, yes, I simply wrote them and then we meet up, because that's how I remember it. But before going into the podcast, I went back and checked the emails. Before we actually met, we exchanged around 40 emails. So it wasn't as short as I thought it was.
It was a very long process, which I completely took out of my mind. I don't know why, but it was longer than I could remember. But the thing is, sometimes we overcomplicate things in our mind, whereas even if it took long, the process was very straightforward. You first reach out to them, you explain what you're doing, I asked what I wanted, what I was building. And mind you, I was still writing with my Andrea Gmail account. So nothing was there, no website, no name. I didn't even have the name the first time that I contacted them. So it was very premature in a way, but still I needed that so that I could build the thing. And we exchanged ideas, we talked about what we were building, and then we decided that we could meet in London. And the accountant that we worked with back then also had an office. So he let us rent his office in London and to meet one of the managers of LifeSaver, so that we could look a little bit more professional. So we had an office.
Looks like a proper startup.
Exactly. It was myself, my mother, the accountant, and a lawyer who used to work with the accountant who liked what we were doing, and he decided to sit down with us and help us. And I remember the email after the meeting, this guy from LifeSaver, he wrote me back and he said, yes, it was very good to meet you and the whole team. But we didn't have a whole team. It was myself, my mother, and the accountant. So, but still, it gave a good impression. So from them, we started talking a little bit more about the functionalities, the organizational side of a possible water project, and we started exchanging ideas and things about the legal side of things, which was something very new for me, especially at that level. And long story short, you mentioned it quite nicely in the introduction. That technology was just the first technology that we got in touch with, because we didn't end up working with them. We worked with another company. And what is interesting to notice and to share is that a lot of times when I had to go into certain direction, you have this first connection, for example, with this LifeSaver, and you go all the way in, and then things don't work. But a lot of times these things don't work because they weren't supposed to be working. They were just there to open a door and open your vision about the different possibilities that you have. And from that, I actually discovered that there are a lot of water technologies, a lot of different ways to clean water, a lot of different type of methodologies in doing the water projects. So that was our first step, was LifeSaver, which brought us to the next following step.
So in a way, as you said, LifeSaver was a sort of eye-opener to this breakthrough project of clean water technology, which then brings exactly to another project, which was kind of a second step before going to then the third and last step, which we'll touch at the very end. No spoiler, although you already made a very incredible episode with them. Before going into that, you got in touch, if I remember correctly, with a water technology, which was also using the solar energy to clean water. And I find this fascinating because water and solar power, that's the perfect analogy behind the idea of Elliot for water, which we discussed in our previous and first episode. And here you come in touch with this company called SolWa. So SolWa, if I remember correctly from the name, it means actually it's a name divided into two terms, which is solar, water. It was developed by an amazing Italian startup within the University of Padua. And the way in which SolWa works, it's very simple. Physically speaking, it's a little bit more complicated, but I'll try to explain it in a couple of words. So SolWa basically mimics nature. It recreates the Earth's natural water life cycle inside a box. It takes the solar thermal energy, heats it up, takes water first, then heats up with the solar thermal energy. By heating the water up, the water evaporates and leaves all the dirt and the salt underneath. And then it condenses back into safe and drinkable water. So nothing very complex in terms of parts, in terms of materials. It's an affordable materials that can be found anywhere, very also cheap, and the power of sun, just like Elliot. And I think that SolWa here, Andrea, you have got a really good story to tell us. Firstly, again, how you came in touch with them and how you envisioned originally the partnership with SolWa.
Yeah, so it worked in a similar way because it was a period where I was trying to look for new partners for the water projects again, because I was of the belief that you need to find this one thing and place it everywhere. And in the Italian television, there was a sort of scientific TV program, TV shows. And that is where they were interviewing Paolo Franceschetti, who was the founder and the creator of the SolWa technology. And like you said, the technology itself, if you see it visually, was basically a table where you put with a glass on top and you put water inside, and then the water gets eaten by the sun, the water becomes steam, and then it goes to the other side of this table and becomes water again. Same exact natural circle. So it was interesting because it was built in a way that it could be duplicated everywhere, because you didn't need, besides the solar panel that you needed to bring, you didn't need anything specific. It could have been built with any sort of materials in a way, because you didn't need specific things to have it worked, and which was the most sustainable and interesting part, because people in the developing countries, they could replace the technology themselves. They could build it with different types of materials. So again, I saw this interview, and very simply I just dropped her an email. I was like, yes, it's me. Hello. I'm building a search engine, and the idea is that we use part of the revenue to create water projects, and I would love to use your technology so that we can bring it to all these different parts of the world where they need it, so that we can help people get access to water. Long story short, we were interested, they were happy about the possibility, and they invited us, again, myself and my mother, we took the train and they invited us to Venice, next to Venice, which is where they had their buildings and their offices. And so we went there, and if we go a little bit more into the kind of coincidence kind of things, I remember that when we were going to Venice in the train, I was watching a movie that I have on my laptop for 6 months at least, which was Noah with Russell Crowe. And when Russell Crowe was explaining how the flood was going to work, he was saying the water is going to come, and then the bacteria and the bad things are going to stay down, and the pure water is going to go up, which was the same way that the founder explained it in the video that I saw. So even before going to arriving in their office, in my mind, I said, okay, this is too big of a coincidence. It's going to work out perfectly, and we are going to work out with them. So we met, we exchanged things. They showed everything, their offices, their technologies. And the interesting part is that they didn't stop at the water. Based on the solar energy, they developed a whole series of solutions. So the first one was to purify water, and then they created something to create agriculture. So it was basically a very small handmade greenhouse where they could reuse water and then use it to cultivate and grow food and grow vegetables. And then they built another one where they could dry food, so that the food could last months instead of just a couple of days. So they built all these different solutions that could be replicated with basically any sort of materials, and that could put the villages into the position of having clean water, cultivate and dry their food so that it could last longer, which is, funnily enough, is what we ended up doing with WellFound in a slightly different way. But so the whole thing was extremely interesting because it was taking all sorts of aspects in a very sustainable way. And both of us were very happy to work together. So we started this collaboration this time. It was just, let's do something good for the world. And they were, back then, Milan was hosting the Universal expositions, and they were invited to the exposition to showcase their technologies. And they invited us to go with them. So we basically had our official Elliot for Water launch during the Universal exposition. It was very kind of them, and it was very beautiful to start the project in such a big event, because that got us the possibility to be interviewed by radios and newspapers and all sorts of things. So it was very cool for us. We spent a week over there, and it was very, very interesting. And that's basically how it started. And fun thing was that we later on discovered that both of us thought that the collaboration was too good to be true. So we were afraid that they didn't want to work with us, and they were afraid that we didn't want to work with them. So at one point we just sat down and we find out this thing, and we just started laughing at each other because it was very fun to find out. So that's how he was born.
That's incredible how from that very early stage of Elliot for Water, back in those days, you managed to get into the Milan Universal Exposition. Which it must have been like a breathtaking experience for you to be there and to have the possibility to showcase, in a way, Elliot for Water to the world. And then remind me one thing, because I think that we touched like the two main milestones. We touched LifeSaver. We said the eye-opener of the water technology. Then we go into SolWa, which is the perfect match, the perfect analogy of Elliot for Water. In a way, it's the alter ego of Elliot for Water, SolWa, which brings you on the top of the world, in a way, in the Milan Expo. And then there's a very last and third and probably most important milestone of WellFound.
Yeah, exactly. So we got invited in London to speak at a WASH event, and WASH means water, sanitation, health. So you had all the key speakers, you had all the water charities, you had the very big organization like the Microsoft, like the Unilever, and all those companies who had a sustainability department because of what they do. So we went there and I presented Elliot for Water, what we were doing. And of course, part of the presentation was SolWa. And in the audience, both the founder and the CEO of WellFound, Anthony, who we had the episode a couple of episodes ago, were there, and they saw what we were doing, and they were very interested in our model, and they were very interested in working with SolWa as well, because they had the opportunity to bring solar panels to the village that they were working with. The fact that the technology could be handmade with any sort of materials was very interesting for them. So after the event, we started talking, and they invited us to go to their office in London. So we went, we exchanged what we wanted to do, and we decided to work together and finance the water project through WellFound, which is honestly the best thing that could have happened to us, because initially I was the idea of doing the water projects ourselves, but that's not something that is not very doable, first of all, because the water projects are a very complicated and risky topic, because you can't just go dig a well and leave, because that's how the water project fails. That's how people die as well, because in some parts of the world, when you give access to water, then the local warlord can decide to come, put his own little army next to the well and start selling the water to the people. The fact that WellFound came in with their experience in the water project, it opened our eyes on how the water projects actually have to be made, and the sustainability around them, the fact that you need to work with the people alongside them, and they have to be a very direct and a very integral part of the project, because otherwise it's not going to work on the long term. Whereas with them, they work with the people, they have them save money as well 6 months before the project is even started, so that they can show commitment. Because when the people can show commitment, they know that the water project, that the wells and the fences or whatever it is that they build with them is going to be taken care of. So it's a very beautiful way, the system that they use to work. And with them, they dig wells. So because again, in some parts of the world, it's not about cleaning, it's about giving the access to water, especially where WellFound works, which is in the most remotest places in Guinea-Bissau and Sierra Leone. So you need to dig a well. And then on top of that, they are very open to add different types of technologies that could help the community, especially when it's the community that is asking for them, because the community knows exactly what they need. So if they need a solar panel or if they need something to help them with agriculture, they will let WellFound know, and together they will find a way to go get those things together and build the perfect relationship and the perfect project. And once they do that, the community becomes completely independent, and from there it starts growing by itself. For example, Anthony, while speaking in the episode, he explained how our community started with this well and with this market garden, and from that they built 2 extra schools alone without WellFound even knowing about it. And this showcase how important sustainability, how important empowerment is, and having the community work with them is.
Exactly. And again, I will redirect all our listeners to listen to again the episode with Anthony and WellFound, because I think it's really interesting to see how WellFound works and what drilling new water wells means for those community. So before wrapping up, Andrea, I have like a very final question, because so far we have seen 3 different types of technology, 3 different types of working in a way. And if you had to look back at those days when you were a young entrepreneur, what did those initial conversations look like? What do they mean for you? And how those people perceived you, like a crazy young founder of a startup trying to save the world by providing accessible and drinking water? How did it feel? This is more a question for, you know, the young entrepreneurs that are out there, and sometimes they might find themselves a little bit scary on going there and start a partnership with the bigger guys in a way, or more established companies.
Yeah, well, the general reaction, I think it was pretty positive, because the whole project was very positive. Our goal was to create a Google that could help the world at the same time without asking for donations. So the concept was very easy to understand, and the concept was received in a pretty positive way. Then, if we talk about the press side of things, that side was more interested in the aspect that you just said, like, you are basically going to compete against Google. Aren't you scared? It's something extremely big and all these kind of things. But at the time, I just saw an opportunity, because I thought that the market was extremely big, and if you could touch, which, I mean, it's not that easy now. Now I know it, but at the time, I was just straight out of the university. That was the process. Like, oh, it's such a big market that we only need a little niche to become extremely successful, and Google won't even notice. But it doesn't always work
Then
that
you
way.
face
But
reality.
yeah, you need to go through it. But that was their side. On my end, I wasn't very worried about it, because I thought that we could have a shot in our niche. So the idea of being scared at the time, it never really crossed my mind. I can't explain why. It was just the way I was feeling, maybe because I was too inexperienced. I mean, when we put the website online, now I'm a little bit ashamed, but the day we put the website online, I wrote a friend and I said, okay, today we stop working, tomorrow we are rich. It's going to be an overnight success, which that's just not the way it works, because from the outside, we are bombarded by these companies that becomes extremely successful. The reality is that they are 0.5% of the all companies. And on top of that, a lot of times, unless it's a bubble, overnight success are actually 6, 7, 8 years of work before becoming an overnight success. It's just that we didn't know about them before. So that was the thing. And on the other side, the companies wanted to see a business opportunity, and they wanted to understand if this project could work, so that they could decide whether or not we would be a good fit for them. Again, it's not that complicated. It's long, and it might be difficult in the process, because obviously it's difficult, but the system itself is, you need to just find a website, whoever it is that you want to work with, drop an email, explain what you want, and now you have LinkedIn. You can go and meet people who work at the company. You can reach out to them and say, hey, can you help me out? I'm trying to reach out to your company because this is what I want to build. People tend to want to help other people, so they are probably going to give you the right connection or make a warm introduction for yourself if you just ask. So yeah, that's how we go start.
It's again, it's another analogy to the ripple effect in a way. You started thinking about the LifeSaver brought you to open your eyes to another technology which was SolWa, and then from SolWa you got to the final and one of the main partner of Elliot for Water until these days, which is WellFound. So that's again how the story, in a way, of the ripple effect gets profound and gets built. But also another thing that I wanted to add, just to wrap up all this amazing episode, is we spoke a lot about water project, and there are so many out there. And I want to link the water to climate change, because when you think about water scarcity, you think about the social and immediate impact that might have for the local community to have water available, which is keeping children healthy or giving the possibility to men and women not to walk for kilometers to go and fetch drinkable water. But all this filtration, desalination tool, the well drilling that WellFound is doing, they also do something else. It's not just a social impact, there's also a big environmental component. They also fight climate change in a way. And again, thinking about the ripple effect, right now, roughly a fifth of the world population doesn't have access to safe and drinkable water. And when these millions of people come back to their homes with contaminated water from wherever they took it, from the sources where they took it, in order to protect themselves from waterborne disease, what do they have to do? They have to boil the water to sterilize it. And boiling the water, they do it by using very old cookstove, which burn lots of woody and charcoal biomass. So that means that widespread deforestation, because you cut down lots of trees, and it also means pouring down tons and tons of CO2 straight into the atmosphere, so that family can have drinkable and accessible water. So when startups like Elliot for Water or WellFound or SolWa, they come to this project together, they partner with each other, they don't just bring safeable drinkable water to this community. They just don't empower this community. They also have a big environmental intervention, and they fight climate change in a way, because they stop burning trees, they save trees, and they stop emitting CO2 in the atmosphere. So that's again a perfect analogy, a perfect metaphor for the ripple effect and what these projects are doing, not just at the social level, but also environmental level.
I think that you just wrap it up perfectly. I think water is no pun intended, but water is the perfect ripple effect, because from there it goes and touch all sorts of different aspects of life. Among those, the environmental side, as you just perfectly explained.
Good. That's great. Well, I think we've got it for this time as well. I think you can wrap it up. Thank you very much, Andrea.
No, thank you for being the host today. It has been an absolute pleasure. And we will see you in the next episode of the Ripple Effect. And for everyone listening, thank you very much for joining us in this episode. Please remember to subscribe, share, and comment the video. And as always, this episode has been brought to you by Elliot for Water, the new and latest version of Elliot for Water. And what Elliot for Water is today is a new tab extension that turns your homepage into a productivity dashboard, and then uses 20% of the revenue to finance clean water projects. So if you want to know more, or if you want to give it a try, just go to elliottforwater.com and you can download it with one click. So thank you very much again, and we will see you in the next episode.
Thanks, Andrea.